Destination Medicine is a collaborative initiative of regional training hubs. With first-hand lessons learned from those who have gone before, this podcast is designed to assist and inspire anyone interested in pursuing a medical career in rural and regional Australia.
Welcome to Destination Medicine. I'm Nicole Goodman. Georgia Cunningham grew up just a couple of hours outside of Brisbane. That proximity to the Sunshine State's capital allowed her to compare rural living with the metropolitan hustle and bustle. Her preference? Well, she much prefers the bush. As part of her Doctor of Medicine program at the University of Sydney, Georgia was offered a rural rotation in Dubbo, in central New South Wales. This led to her applying and receiving a placement at Dubbo Base Hospital after graduation. She explains the application process, the interview experience, and the opportunities and challenges she faces working in a regional setting. And she offers some advice for others hoping to explore a rural internship. All that and more in a moment. First, Chris Ashmore asks Georgia when her interest in medicine began.
I always had an interest in science ever since I was quite young, and I always considered a career in medical research initially. But I started an undergraduate degree in Queensland in medical research and biotechnology and mathematics, and then decided I missed the human interaction and dealing with the diversity of different people, and so I ended up pursuing medicine from there.
Well, fast forward to now. Can you tell us about the intern application process? Did you attend any information sessions, and are there any resources you can point our listeners to?
Yeah, so I was in Dubbo at the time when I was applying for jobs for internship, and I attended a lot of the information nights that were held here in Dubbo. And I suppose I just loved my time here, and so that was really what encouraged me to stay on in Dubbo. One of the very helpful resources that a lot of students use when they're applying is the AMA Health Check, which gives you a breakdown of all the different hospitals and what the working culture's like and the access to leave. And it gives you a lot of useful information from other people who've gone through. But I suppose the most useful resource is actually the current set of JMOs that are currently working in that hospital that you're applying for. I think also when it comes to applications, applying through the rural scheme is just, you feel like you're employed as a person and you're employed for who you are and what you can bring to the hospital and how you'd fit in with their culture, rather than just the generic statewide application where you're just a random number and you're randomly allocated a hospital. So to be actually working somewhere where you're felt like you're wanted and can fit in is also a much greater start to internship than just being a random number.
Absolutely. Now, you're working at Dubbo Health Service. What led you to working there?
So I didn't know a lot about regional New South Wales when I moved down here, actually. I grew up in Queensland, so I didn't even know where a lot of these towns were. And I think I ended up in Dubbo by accident almost. I always wanted to work regionally. And so when I got the opportunity in medical school to complete a year out in Dubbo, I just jumped at the opportunity. And the first time I came to Dubbo was when I moved out here as a medical student. And then I just loved it and stayed on since.
You say you always wanted to work regionally. Why is that?
Yeah. I'd grown up in a town that was on the outskirts of Brisbane, and it was technically considered rural, but we had the benefit of being only a couple of hours from Brisbane, so we had all the benefits of being able to go into the city easy and access all the resources that you could ever want, but also living in a regional town. So I got to see the best of both worlds, and I think I decided that I didn't want to stay in the city forever. And then when I moved to Sydney, although I thoroughly enjoyed my time in Sydney, it wasn't really where I wanted to end up long term.
Now, was there anything from your interview that you believe assisted in you being offered a placement or internship at Dubbo?
I think just having a chat with some of the doctors that are currently working there and some of the staff. I think if you're a nice person and can interact well and have a good conversation, and you don't necessarily have to be the most academically talented student. You just need to be a good team player and a safe clinician. And I think that's really what they're looking for when you're applying for internship. You don't have to have all the textbook knowledge because you can learn that as time goes by.
Absolutely. Any highlights from your training so far?
Oh, there's so many highlights really working in Dubbo. I could talk about this all day. I think number one is probably the people of Western New South Wales, the other staff you work with in the hospital and the patients. You see such a diversity of people and fascinating people who've lived very interesting lives, and that's really what I love about medicine, and that's really what I enjoy about working in Dubbo is just the diversity you see here. But also there's a lot of clinical exposure that you don't necessarily get in the city, and there's a lot of opportunities to step up and really advance your training and your skill set. And there's a lot of challenges that come with regional New South Wales. I mean, we're currently in the middle of a COVID pandemic, and I think that shines a light on a lot of the challenges that face regional Australia.
Well, Dubbo's had its fair share of COVID cases. Can you tell us a bit about that?
Yeah, so currently our cases are starting to go down a bit, but at its peak we were getting about 50 cases a day in Western New South Wales, and we've got a large population of Indigenous Australians. We've got a low socioeconomic, patients struggle to access healthcare at the best of times. And although we've got fantastic staff working in the hospital, it's really brought up a lot of challenges in how we provide care to patients that need it.
Mm-hmm. Well, moving from medical student to intern, what are some of the differences you've noticed in how you've continued your medical education?
Yeah, well, I suppose because I had the privilege of being out here as a medical student, the bosses that you work with really invest in you and your professional development, and they really help train you up and help you be part of the team even from day one as a medical student. And so it made the transition a lot smoother because I got a bit of a graded transition into internship. So I was working as an intern in my final days as a medical student, and then it was quite a smooth transition, whereas I think some of my city colleagues had more of a stark contrast when they started the job.
Well, for those listening, Georgia, what advice would you give to a medical student considering undertaking a rural internship?
Yeah, I think I would just say go for it. I mean, the amount of experience and exposure you get working regionally is just fantastic, and it helps you not only grow as a clinician, but also it helps with your personal development as well. The people you work with here are actively involved in your learning and your career progression and take an active interest in who you are as a person as well. So there's a huge diversity of opportunities, and just working and living in regional New South Wales is just so much more exciting than being in Sydney.
Now, was your choice of university, was that influenced by where you could undertake your training?
Yes and no. I think getting into medicine is often quite a difficult journey. And so for a lot of students, really, you go to medical school where you can get in. For me, I was offered my place at Sydney Uni before any of the other offers came out. So I had time to sort of emotionally invest myself in Sydney Uni, I suppose, and have a look at all the opportunities, and saw that they had a lot of regional sites that they rotated to. So I think it was really just timing and circumstance that led me to Sydney Uni. I don't think I made any particular decision until the offers came out, really.
Now, mentors or those with more experience can often be an asset, particularly for those in more junior or training positions. Did you have a mentor or someone of significant influence to help you?
I think working in medicine, you deal with a huge diversity of people and all different skills. And one of the things that I've learnt is to develop your own clinical practice. The most important thing is to learn from everyone. And we've got a huge number of fantastic consultants that work here in Dubbo at the moment. And I've had the opportunity to learn huge amounts from every single one of them that I've ever worked with. And I think turning yourself into a good clinician involves taking snippets of what you learn from everyone else and putting it together to develop your own clinical practice. But in addition to the consultants that I've worked with, you also get a huge amount of knowledge that can come from the other staff within the hospital. So I've learned heaps from the allied health staff and the nursing staff, and I don't think one person has contributed to the clinician I am today, but I think it's probably the whole community, and that includes the patients as well, really.
Is there any particular piece of advice that you received during your training that has remained with you?
Yeah, one of the renal consultants in Dubbo said to me when I was in my final year of medical school, don't feel rushed to get onto training programs and push through your training and become a consultant as fast as you can, because at the end of the day, all experience is good experience. And if you take an extra year to do an SRMO year to find out exactly what you want to do or which path you want to go down, then it's incredibly valuable. And you've got to enjoy your training, because it takes a long time to become a consultant. And if you don't enjoy what you're doing every single day, then it's going to be a very long journey.
Well, if we can look towards the journey in perhaps 5 or 10 years in the future, where do you see yourself?
So the main goal really is to work regionally. Unfortunately for my training, you have to go back to the city at some point and spend some of your time there. But in the longer run, I want to be doing as much of my time regionally as I possibly can. So that's the number one goal for me. I'm interested in basic physician training, and I've applied for the college this year. So my goals in terms of which specialty I go down is I want to be first and foremost a good general clinician. I want to be able to work regionally and in any hospital and work on a gen med roster. But I also have an interest in aged care and geriatric medicine. And in Dubbo at the moment, we don't have a local geriatrician. And I think it's something that we really need in this community and something that would benefit greatly from. So that's something that I'm interested in.
Well, do you see there's perhaps more opportunities training in a rural or regional hospital than there is in a metropolitan hospital?
Yeah, definitely. So even from being a medical student, I spent my time at the School of Rural Health, and the school really takes an interest in who you are and your skills, and they've got a huge number of opportunities available to you that I didn't necessarily have in Sydney. And then as a JMO, you get to handle a lot of circumstances and deal with a lot of clinical situations, and you're required to step up. And on your relief term, you work as a JMO on nights, and you don't have medical imaging overnight, and you don't have access to consultants, and you have to manage a lot of clinical situations. And it really makes you a good clinician very quickly. And in terms of longer term training, a lot of the colleges now, like you can, if you're interested in any of the critical care positions, you can do a lot of that out in Dubbo. Unfortunately, basic physician training is still very city-based, but you can still do regional terms, which I'm looking forward to hopefully doing.
Now, are there any particular networks or organisations or memberships that have supported you?
Yes, I suppose organisations, the School of Rural Health has been a huge support throughout my time as a medical student. And then even once you finish university, they still take an active interest in you and find out what you're doing and what you're up to and how the hospital's going. So they've been an incredible support during my training. But also within the hospital, there's JMO associations that are involved in improving the well-being and working conditions for JMOs. And so I've been involved in that this year. So the hospital has a lot of communities that help contribute, and widely across New South Wales, there's also the Rural Doctors Association and a lot of other associations that sort of really advocate for people training regionally.
Well, it's fantastic with so much support out there.
Yeah.
Now, before we go, any final words you'd like to add about your training?
I think one thing I would just say is a lot of people are a bit anxious to go regionally because they're worried about leaving their support system, maybe back in Sydney or in the city, and they're worried about being a bit isolated regionally. But that is definitely not the case. I found when I came out here, I was incredibly supported by the other students and the other doctors and the university and the wider community as a whole. So it really contributes to your lifestyle and your enjoyment of the job as well as your own personal development. So yeah, come regionally.
That's Georgia Cunningham, Resident Medical Officer at Dubbo Base Hospital. This is Destination Medicine. Thanks for listening.
Regional training hubs are supported by funding from the Australian Government under the Rural Health Multidisciplinary Training Program.